Yes, good evening, everybody. We're back again for another women's football chat. We will give people just a couple of minutes to get into the chat room this evening, and then we will crack straight on. We've got quite a lot of results to go through, and then, weather permitting, of course, looking ahead to the big second round of the Women's FA Cup. Teams now just one game away from a game against a potential championship per opponent in the next round. So yes, in the YouTube live chat is the best way to get involved this evening, but also my notifications and messages are on for the at WFootballChat Twitter page. At WFootballChat is also now over on Blue Sky, because everyone seems to be making the move over to there since Elon's completely ruined Twitter. So we are over there as well. It's the same WFootballChat as it is on X. Very good evening to you, Oliver, who says, how do you think Forest will set up against Wolves and what's your prediction? My prediction is that it will get postponed because of the weather. That's my prediction. I don't think that that game, which is due for kind of mid-January time, will go ahead anytime soon. I do think that will get pushed back somewhat as well. So let's start today's show then. So as I said, we've got plenty of results to go through. We've got a little bit of news to go through first of all as well. We will start with yesterday's news from the Southern Premier Division, and that is that Billericay Town have announced the departure of their manager Adrian Parrell with immediate effect. This is because club chairman Greg Lake has put out that Kim Coster, and he reluctantly accept Adrian's resignation this morning. He wants to return to Gibraltar and his family there. He has his own personal reasons for making this decision, and as I said to him, ultimately in life you must do what makes you happy. We'd like to thank him for coming into the club at a key point just before the season started. On a personal note, I believe that I've made a friend for life, and I will miss my conversations with Adrian. This is football though, and the club rather will move forward from this point. The search for a new manager is already progressing, and we hope to make a positive announcement in the next few days. So Billericay Town now without a manager, but no longer without a manager are Solihull Moors. They have announced the appointment of Joe Kirkland as the new first team manager and Trevor Sutcliffe as the assistant manager for Solihull Moors Women. Was currently in 11th in the Division 1 Midlands, after having that point deduction as well. As well. Will they be able to get out of the relegation zone? Will 11th even still be a relegation spot come the end of the season? We'll have to wait and see what the FA decision on that is going to be whenever they make that. You would think it'd be some point before the end of the season, because teams will really need to know where they are playing next year and what the situation is, at least when we go towards the back end of this season rather. So let's crack straight on then, after we've gone through the news with the results from the past 7 days. Now, it was last weekend County Cup weekend as well, so quite a few teams were involved in that and scoring double-digit wins against some village side in Tier 7. It seems to be the way of these early rounds of the County Cup. So let's crack on with the Northern Premier Division to start with. Very quick one, early doors. Derby 0, Sporting Cowser 0. Very good away point that, I feel, for Sporting Cowser away at Derby County, who we know have not had the best of times so far this season. Hull City losing to Burnley by 2-0. Both goals in the second half here for Burnley, who seem to do a really good job this year of getting those results in the latter stages of games and getting the goals they need to keep themselves in touch with the teams at the top. Brennan McPartlin and Claudia Walker's goal in the 94th minute there for Burnley. And Forest beating Stoke by 4-0. 2 in the first half, 2 in the second half. Kate Longhurst, Millie Chandarana, Holly Olding and Freya Thomas with the goals for Forest in that game. So again, not many results there in that game, but in that league. But importantly, it does provide quite a bit of movement at the top. Forest go back to the top at the halfway stage. 11 games played, 11 to go. They are 1 point ahead of Wolves, who are in second. Burnley move up to third because Rugby did not play. So Burnley have a game in hand on those top two, so they can get back to within a point of Forest as well. And yeah, it's very tight at the top. Down towards the bottom, Sporting Cows's point gets them to within 2 of Stourbridge, who are in 10th. Derby are in 7th at the moment. Let's go through to the Southern Premier Division then. Now, nobody was in County Cup action in the South, so we have a full programme of fixtures, including important games towards the top between Ipswich and Oxford and Watford and #United. But we'll start with Billericay Town winning away at Gwalior United. Maddie Biggs with the goal in that game. No time on it, but it was in the first hour because she got substituted off in the 61st minute. Ipswich Town 4, Oxford United 2. Goals in this one, 2 for Lucy O'Brien, 1 for Shauna Guayat and 1 for Maria Boswell for Ipswich, who got the better of Oxford in the second half. It was 2-2 at the break. Zoe Barrett and Leah Burridge with the goals for Oxford. So it looked like it might be quite a tight game. Then Maria Boswell, 17 minutes from time. Lucy O'Brien in stoppage time made it look relatively comfortable for Ipswich in the end. Lewis beating FC Wimbledon by 2-0. Paula Howells and Samantha Quayle both in the first half with their goals. Right, Milton Keynes Dons 1, Exeter City 6. Big result for Exeter City here. Bo Jackson with 1, Amber Pollock as well, Sophie Gillies, Sarah Stacey and Ishbel Zermond with a goal as well. Sydney Wotton with the only goal for Milton Keynes Dons. Exeter, that missing goal for Exeter, they only had 5 scorers, was an own goal from Milton Keynes Dons. Now, this is one of the quirks of full time, and one of the reasons that I've been doing my own stats throughout the course of the season as well, is that if you go on that game on full time, every player's goal has got the emoticon of 2 footballs next to it. And what that means is that when you look at the player stats, each one of those goals will have counted for 2 on the full-time stats, which can throw things off a little bit. It's why you've got to go through and check everything over the course of the season. So it is something to be aware of when it comes to looking at stats towards the end of the season. Cheltenham Town then winning 2-0 away at Plymouth. Una Liu in the 22nd minute, Emily Owen in the 70th for Cheltenham. And then the other big game, Watford 2, #United 0. Jessie Gale in the 4th minute put Watford ahead early on. Coral Jade Hines in the 74th minute doubled the advantage and made it relatively comfortable for Watford in the end. But what that means crucially towards the top of the Southern Premier Division, there's been a lot of change in the Southern Premier Division, but it's Ipswich now at the top of the table, and they are ahead by a long way on goal difference, and they've also got 2 games in hand. They have the potential to get themselves 6 points clear at the top of the Southern Premier Division table. You would feel that it is almost Ipswich's to lose now in the Southern Premier Division, because, as I said, they are ahead on goal difference. They're pretty much ahead on points as well, with having 2 games in hand. They have played Oxford twice and they have beaten them. They've beaten # already as well. They got a draw with Exeter earlier on in the season. They are winning or drawing with the teams around them, and it looks as though they could well start to streak ahead at the top of the table. The South, you would estimate, is probably going to be done and dusted before the Northern Premier Division. Right, Division 1 Midlands then, just 3 games to talk about in Division 1 Midlands. Barnsley Women's 4, Lincoln United 0. Barnsley Women's with a good 3 points for them. Goals in this one, 2 to Jemima Jarvis off the substitutes bench, Anita Gaspar and Jodie McAlsher with the other 2 for Barnsley women. What is important though, the big battle down towards the bottom, Worcester City away at Lincoln City, winning by 4-0. 2 for Jessica Fassnidge, 1 for Leah Ritson and 1 for Keely May Crew in the second half for Worcester City. And then towards the top, Northampton Town beating Peterborough United by 2-0. 2 for Jade Bell, who continues to streak ahead at the top of the Division 1 Midlands Golden Boot race. And a convincing second half performance from Northampton Town means that they go top of the Division 1 Midlands table. They're up 2 places from the weekend. Granted, of course, Leaford Athletic didn't play. Peterborough did. They lost to Northampton. So Northampton Town are top of the table. They are 5 points clear of Loughborough Lightning, who have 2 games in hand. Don't forget, as I say it every week, one of those games in hand is Northampton against Loughborough. So Leaford Athletic will be looking to stay hot on the heels of Northampton Town when they play that game. The only other movement in Division 1 Midlands, Barnsley Women's against Notts County. Although that has, going into Division 1 Midlands and talking about Leaford Athletic, has reminded me about the winners of the October Manager of the Month award. Goes to Stoke City, Marie Hurahan and Tash Tesjo of Leafield Athletic after strong Octobers for Stoke City and for Leafield Athletic. The November Manager of the Month might be more difficult to decide, with Cup second round games and FA Cup games and County Cup games, and some teams not actually playing a league game, which is going to be the same situation in December, but we'll see what happens there. So yeah, another award for Leaford Athletic, who have done so well so far this season. And as I said earlier on, new managers at Solihull Moors will be hoping that they can use their games in hand to their advantage. They are now 4 points after Worcester City won away at Lincoln City, 4 points away from safety, but they have 3 in hand over Worcester City. And of course, whatever happens with the Championship, which will feed down into Tier 3 promotion and relegation, which will feed down into Tier 4 promotion and relegation, maybe 11th pot in Division 1 Midlands is enough. If the season was to end today, it would be, because Portsmouth would come down from the Championship, which means no one would feed into the Northern Premier Division, which means only one team would go down from the Northern Premier Division. That would be Halifax, which means that Sporting Cowser would stay in the division, which means no one would feed into Division 1 Midlands, which means that Solihull Moors would stay in the division to keep everybody at 12. In theory, what we don't know, of course, is that the FA might come out in March and say, right, top 2 leagues are 14 teams each, and then that completely changes everything. But we're not going to know the answer to that until some sort of document comes out. So we can but speculate at the moment. Right, Division 1 North, 4 results to go through in that one. AFC Fylde 0, Cheadle Town Stingers 2. A great result for Cheadle Town away at Fylde. Harriet Horton in the 6th minute put them in front, the insurance marker to Isabel Dean in the 89th minute. Huddersfield Town beating Doncaster Rovers Bells by 4-2. Goals for Doncaster, Jasmine Saxton and Izzy Grigg. Goals for Huddersfield Town, Bethany Ibbotson, Beth Stanfield, and 2 for Charlotte Stewart in that one. Leeds United 3, York City 0. Darcy Green, Drew Green and Amy Woodruff for Leeds with a comfortable win over York. But Middlesbrough drop points again. Goals in this one, an own goal each, 1 for each side. Then Leanna Giles for Middlesbrough and Elania Midlard for Barnsley means, yeah, Middlesbrough for the 2nd week in a row drop points. And that means that Cheadle Town Stingers are top of Division 1 North. After only getting promoted at the start of this season, they are top of the table. Granted, Leeds United and Middlesbrough both have a game in hand on them, and Chorley could also get level on points, but with the goal differential, it's unlikely they would catch them. So granted, Leeds and Middlesbrough, both with games in hand, could overtake Cheadle, but you have to, at the halfway point, admire what Dylan Wimber has done at Cheadle Town, because to go from Tier 5 to the top of Tier 4 is quite a strong achievement. The concern, from my point of view, it would be if they would move up the pyramid almost too quickly. But again, we'll have to see how that goes throughout the second half of the season. As I said, Leeds and Middlesbrough both with games in hand towards the bottom. It's still so tight. Norton Stockton Ancients in 6th are only 2 points clear of the relegation zone, which is, to be a top half team and be so close to being relegated is quite something in Division 1 North. I think Tier 4 really is showing us how strong it can be this season. 5 games to go for in Division 1 South East. Actonians 2, Ashford Town 0. Goals in this one to Actonians, both to Hanan Alali in the 70th and the 86th minute. AFC Sudbury 4, London Seaward 1, 2 for Lena Nagib, 1 for Yasmin Drake, 1 for Sophie Jeffrey for Sudbury. Chloe O'Brien with the only goal for London Seaward on the 70th minute mark. Then we go Chatham Town 1, Cambridge United 0. Otesha Charles with the only goal for Chatham. And then Norwich City, more points dropped, a loss this time away at Queen's Park Rangers. Grace Stanley in the 46th minute, Emilia De Santos in the 86th minute with the goals for Queen's Park Rangers. Kerry Fly with the only goal for Norwich City, but they drop points again, and Real Bedford continue their charge. Abby Benstead, Chiara Miola and Trisha Gould with the goals for Real Bedford. They beat Dulwich Hamlet by 3 goals to 0. Meaning for the table, Actonians stay top, Real Bedford stay second, and Chatham stay third. Real Bedford, though, still unbeaten in the Division 1 South East this season. They are 2 points behind Actonians and with a game in hand. That table may look significantly different come the end of this weekend. We'll go into that in a moment. AFC Sudbury up 3 because the midfield in Division 1 South East is so tight. Queen's Park Rangers up 1. Norwich City down 2. Norwich City, the early front runners, now down in 6th. London Bees down 2 in 7th as well. Everything towards the bottom stays the same. Still, those bottom 3 in a mini league of their own to see who survives. And finally, Division 1 South West, Bridgewater United 3, Southampton Women's 1. Still yet to get a win this season, Southampton. 2 for Holly Tappin, 1 for Bethany Everson for Bridgewater United. Aliska Lynn with the only goal for Southampton Women. Keynsham Town 4, Worthing 1. Beatrice Cretes, Vicky Vipon, Lily May Withers and Brooke Stirrup with the goals for Keynsham. Sophie Humphrey with a late consolation goal for Worthing, although that was to make it 3-1. That only lasted a couple of minutes though before Vipond got hers. AFC Bournemouth 8-0 winners over Portishead, 2 for Erin Bloomfield, a hat-trick for Jenna Markham, 1 for Katie James, Maisie Smith and Phoebe Williams. Bournemouth very convincing winners in that one. And the game of the day, arguably, Swindon Town 4, Moneyfields 4. Back and forth game this one. First minute, Swindon take the lead through Libby Davis. Then in the 15th minute, Moneyfields equalise through Megan Fox. They then go ahead 4 minutes later through Brittany Gilles, and it's 2-1 to Moneyfields. Then they go 3-1 up early in the second half. Shannon Albury with the goal in that one. So 3-1 to Moneyfields 3 minutes into the second half. And then that lasts for 6 minutes before on 54 minutes, Annabelle Colston makes it 3-2. On 55 minutes, Libby Davis gets her second of the afternoon. It's 3-3. Then on 70 minutes, Colston gets her second of the afternoon, 4-3 to Swindon. That lasts only 7 minutes before Megan Fox equalises for Moneyfields again. It's 4-4, and that's how it finishes. Such a back and forth game there between Swindon Town and Moneyfields. For the table then, that draw for Swindon has really helped Bournemouth. Bournemouth top, they would have been right on the cusp anyway. Had Swindon won that game, there'd be a point back with 2 games in hand. But as it stands now, Bournemouth a point up on Swindon and with 2 games in hand, looking very strong as well. 9 wins out of 9. No real issues for Bournemouth so far this season. Down towards the bottom, Bridgewater United are above Worthing. That's the only other movement in the Division 1 Southwest this season. This week so far. Southampton women still at the bottom, no points. They did get that draw, but then they had a point taken off them. Bournemouth Sports in the relegation zone on 5, Portishead on 6, and Abingdon on 8. Then there is that gap to Worthing. So maybe a bit of a mini league from the teams down towards the bottom there, but a little bit too early to tell any of that. Oliver then, so obviously we are live this evening. If you do want to get involved, the live chat is the place to go and do that. Put your questions, put your comments, anything like that. We can have a bit of a discussion about, should the pyramid expand? What are your thoughts for the FA Cup second round coming up this weekend? So Oliver says, what's happened to Andy Cook's magic? I mean, the difficult thing really for Norwich at the moment, if we just go and have a look at the Southeast table, I've got a more detailed one up here on my other screen, but they have, from their 10 games, 4 wins, 4 draws, 2 losses. The 2 losses aren't what seems to be that much of a problem. They've drawn a lot of games. If they'd have won 2 of those games, they draw. That's an extra 4 points. You're on 20. You're all very much still in the discussion, really. But a draw with London Bees. I mean, a draw with Real Bedford 0-0, potentially at home. If you're going to be winning the league, those are the sort of games you really want to be winning. But I think you've got to look at games such as a 2-2 draw away at Chesham. Chesham, one of the teams down in the bottom 3 at the moment. London Bees are down in 7th. A draw with AFC Sudbury. Sudbury are in 4th, but they were down in 7th before this weekend. So yeah, Norwich is an interesting one, and I think the way that league is going, they're now 7 points off the pace. It's going to be difficult for them to make that up with so little of the season left. 12 games, we're pretty much at the halfway point, but not impossible the way that league is looking. And then also says, if Bournemouth can't get out of this division, it should be a dismal issue. I think, Bournemouth should get out of that division, unless they have a shot couple of draws, maybe a defeat to Swindon, but they've already beaten them relatively comfortably, so probably not going to do that either. Bournemouth, I think, really should be the ones that get out of that division. I don't think South West is going to be, come March, April time, the league that we're looking at for all of the drama come the back end of the season. So, results done. Let's go through and look at the fixtures for the upcoming week. We're going to start with the league fixtures. There's barely any of them, but there are some fixtures where multiple sides have been knocked out of the FA Cup already, so we are able to squeeze a league fixture in. This is all weather permitting, of course. We still have snow here in the East Midlands, particularly where I am on high ground anyway. Our garden's still completely white, the tops of the roofs are still white, and we haven't actually had any snow since Monday night, so a few forecasts are saying, we're going to get some more as well, which could really play havoc with some of the football that's intended to be played over the course of this weekend. Although here in Grantham, we're just talking about a lot of rain and a lot of wind. So we'll see what happens with that one. So let's have a look at the fixtures. We'll start in Division 1 Midlands. There's only one. It's Solihull against Notts County. Solihull down in 11th, Notts County currently in 7th. Notts, you would expect, will probably win that game, put themselves in the top half, but Solihull will be desperate to get themselves back to within a point of safety. The one thing I'll say with Solihull Moors, and it's the same with Southampton Women's as well, but I think it's more likely with Solihull Moors, I really hope that the point deduction that they got isn't what ends up relegating them. I totally see why, obviously, points productions are done, everything like that. We get that. Um, you ought to have points productions for failing to put data onto full time properly. York City, I'm looking at you. You've played 9 games. You've failed to put opposition player of the match on full time on 5 occasions out of 9. And of course, that can have impacts on the awards at the end of the season as well. So you'd expect Notts to probably win that game, but Solihull will be desperate to close that gap, particularly after Worcester City's win at the weekend. Division 1 North, just one. Chorley against Norton and Stockton Ancients. That is 4th against 6th. Chorley could, if they have a big win, get themselves up into 2nd. Norton are kind of in a bit of no man's land, really. They're 7 points away from Huddersfield in 5th, so they can't really do anything. What they will be keen to do is, as I mentioned earlier, put a gap between themselves and the bottom 2, because although they're in 6th, they are only 2 points above the drop zone. Division 1 South East, huge game at the top. Actonians hosting Rail Bedford. Rail Bedford are unbeaten. Actonians are top. Should Rail Bedford get the better of Actonians this weekend, they will go top and have a game in hand. They'll be in a similar situation to Cheadle Town, a newly promoted team at the top of the division. The only other game, big towards the bottom, Dulwich Hamlet against Chesham United. This is Chesham United's game in hand over London Seaward, one of the games in hand over Ashford Town. They'll be really hoping they can get something from the game. Dulwich Hamlet, you would feel if they won this game, got themselves to 16 points, that would be 13 clear of the bottom 2. That would probably, the way this league is going, be enough for them. To be honest, 13 is probably enough for them, and 10 may well be enough for Cambridge United. But with those teams in the bottom 3 having to play each other, they could start to close the gap. So anything these teams can do, like Dulwich, like Cambridge United can do to further increase that gap now, will be all the better for them. Right, Division 1 South West, there's just one game, Keynsham Town against Abingdon United. Keynsham are in 5th, Abingdon are in 9th. Abingdon 3 points above the relegation zone. Keynsham, again, can't really do anything. Keynsham, you feel, particularly because they've played the same number of games as Bournemouth, they're 11 points off. That's 4 wins. They aren't going to pressure the top of the table come the end of the season. They're kind of almost already just playing out the season, because with an 11-point gap to the bottom 2, they're not really going to get dragged into that either. Abingdon will be looking for around the 15-16 point mark to get themselves clear of any danger. So they'll be desperate at this point to try and, bit similar to the likes of Dulwich, likes of Cambridge, just increase that gap as much as possible so they're not having to look over their shoulder come the end of the season. And right, let's go then through to the FA Cup second round. See, I'm covering some of the fixtures at the moment. I'll move myself over here, then I'll move myself back. So we have in the FA Cup second round, we have 58 teams. We have 19 from tier 3, 19 from tier 4, 14 from tier 5, and 6 from tier 6. We have at least 4 teams from tier 5 or 6 guaranteed to progress into the next round, with a chance of facing a championship club who come in, of course, in round number 3. So same as when I've done FA Cup before, I will cover the FA Cup as long as there is an FAWNL side or below, let's be fair, FAWNL or below in this. By the time it gets to All Championship and Super League, well, that's when the likes of BBC and co actually take an interest in the Women's FA Cup. So they can take over from there. I'll do all the early rounds. So on the screen, the tier that the team is in is the number in brackets. So we've got Hull City against Middlesbrough, Accrington Stanley hosting Huddersfield Town, Durham Sestra against Chester Street Town, Mancunian Unity against Handsworth, South Shields take on Liverpool Feds, Burnley against Bradford City, FC St Helens against Cheadle Town Stingers, Wolverhampton Wanderers against Sporting Cowser, Stoke City against Loughborough Lightning, Norwich City against Leafield Athletic, Rugby Borough take on Peterborough United, Kidderminster Harriers against Stourbridge. That game's not this weekend. That game is next Wednesday. So it's later than everything else, but it still comes within the next week of this show. So Kidderminster Harriers against Stourbridge next Wednesday, not at the weekend. Shrewsbury Town against Sheffield. West Bromwich Albion take on Worcester City. Long Itchington, they are the lowest ranked side left in the competition, and they are hosting the joint highest ranked side in the competition at the moment in Nottingham Forest. Brentford against London Seaward, Queen's Park Rangers against Saltdean United, and Hashtag United against Ipswich Town. Corker of a tie that is going to be. And then on the second page of the games, Oxford United against Watford, Aylesford against Worthing, London Bees take on Chatham Town, Fulham against Royston Town, Stevenage against Luton Town, Lewes against AFC Sudbury, Plymouth Argyle take on Exeter, quite a local derby there, Cheltenham Town against Moneyfields, Marine Academy Plymouth against Bristol Rovers, Gwalior United against Bridgewater United, and AFC Portchester against AFC Bournemouth. So just before we finish up for this week, then, would love to know out of those FA Cup fixtures where you think the shocks are going to come. So let me know in the comments where you think those shocks are going to come. In the meantime, Oliver says, when do these games need to be played if the beast from the east strikes again? So FA Cup takes priority over everything else. The way to think of it is cups obviously always take priority. The way I think of it anyway is the more leagues are affected, the higher the priority. So Women's FA Cup affects every single league from Super League down to Tier 7, so that gets first. County Cup affects everything from 3 down to 7, so 5 leagues. Then the FAWNL Cup and Plate is 2 tiers, and then League Games 1 tier. So that's kind of your order. So if the games can't be played this weekend, they will be scheduled in for next weekend, and they will just keep being scheduled in for subsequent weekends until they get played. It's as simple, and everything else will shunt. It's as simple as that. Steve Gregory, evening to you, Steve. Hoping for a Bristol derby in the third round if Rovers get past Marine Academy Plymouth. That would be great. A Bristol derby. I think the one thing you hope for is that obviously you want as many, from my point of view anyway, as many of these Tier 5 and Tier 6 teams as possible, and the Tier 4 teams really, to get through. Now, obviously, from my point of view, as long-term viewers of the show will know, I'm a Forest fan. Obviously, I want Forest to go as far as possible, but they don't need the Craig at Tongwoso's kind of added it all up, but first round proper about 8,000. So it's, you want as many teams from as low down the pyramid as possible to progress as far in the FA Cup as possible to get into the third round where the money spikes through the roof because the top teams come in so they get more money as possible, really. So as many shocks as we can have through would be great. I think from my point of view, looking at that second page, difficult to know where shocks are going to come from on that page because there's not really any big teams underneath. I mean, Moneyfields might fancy themselves against Cheltenham. And then you go back onto the first page. I can keep myself covering up hashtag against Ipswich Town. I think that, again, you look at that page as well and you go, okay, maybe Loughborough Lightning on their day might fancy themselves against Stoke. Same with Peterborough, maybe against Rugby on their day, but possibly unlikely. Middlesbrough maybe against Hull is arguably the clearest possibility of a shock in this page, but in this round of the FA Cup. But hopefully the games get played, and then we'll see what happens from there with regards to the draw. Hopefully the draw is is filmed, or if the FAWNL Cup and Plate draws can get filmed, and there's no reason why, particularly when the Championship sides come in, the FA Cup can't get drawn live. I think if the I can remember a couple of years ago, the couple of years ago it was done on Talksport 2, and Forest. This was the year that Forest played Manchester City, and they came out of the draw twice, and we were all a bit confused as to who Forest actually got, because nobody could see the ball numbers, so nobody knew if they'd read it out, the ball number out wrong or the team name out wrong. And Forest came out twice, and if I recall, one of them was Man City at home, and the other one was, I think it was a tier 4 side away, something like that. So it made a big difference what this draw was. And it turned out that it was the Man City one, but it shows you why you have to have the draw videoed, really. Pleased that the FAWNL are doing that now. Presumably they will do it again for the semi-finals, but for the Cup and Plate. But when they do that, given when the Cup and Plate fixtures are due to be played, we'll have to wait and see. So this is kind of last call, really, gone for everything you need to go through for this week. And so last call, last minute or so for any questions to come in for this week's show, or we'll wrap it up there and get ourselves ready for I'm a Celebrity at 9 o'clock. So yeah, so next week we should be back live and doing this again. It's always good to actually chat to people and have you kind of lead the discussion a bit. As I said, at W Football Chat is also on Blue Sky now. As I said, everyone seems to be moving across there. I've seen a few teams doing the same thing. So it's still W Football Chat. The handle is the same. I managed to get in early enough that nobody else has got it. And so the show is now over on there as well. And next week, hopefully, we will have a lot of FA Cup to go through. You will see from the board that this weekend, not much league. Next weekend, because it's the Plate Cup and final, there's not much league. Now there are a lot of teams that don't have a game scheduled for next weekend, but the league aren't just putting any fixture in. From what I've seen, the general rule is they're only putting in games that have been postponed earlier on in the season. The camera's probably not clear enough to notice, but against a load of the teams, I've got various symbols meaning that those games have been postponed. So Halifax have had 3 postponed so far. Loughborough Lightning have got 3 postponed that have got to be fitted in. And the likes, getting on with as we go towards winter. The Christmas break is on there as well. But some teams, Sporting Cowser, Wolves in the FA Cup this weekend, that's them done until January. They don't have any other games scheduled for December. Forest just have cup games scheduled between now and Christmas. In fact, I think they're the only 2 actually that have only cup games scheduled between now and Christmas. So yeah, it starts slowing down quite a bit for some teams. But that will about do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. Thank you very much for watching this live show. As I said, at W Football Chat on X or on Blue Sky is the way to go between now and next week's show to keep up to date with all the latest from the FAWNL. If you want to put in any questions or opinion topics, either before the FA Cup, after the FA Cup, or about anything that comes out that concerns the FAWNL between now and next week's show, then the direct messages are open if you want to get in touch, and we can put something in next week's show. But thank you very much for watching this week's 162nd episode of the Women's Football Chat. Hopefully the snow melts and we'll get some good football on for the weekend. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.